It will produce, around 3 million ounces of silver equivalent per year when we bring it back into production and generate very substantial cash flows. So very good opportunity for investors to get in at the ground floor and leverage to two very good assets in silver.
Yeah, so welcome Greg to the YouTube channel. It is a true pleasure to have you on here.
My pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited to talk about Golden Tag.
Perfect. I would like to get right into it by asking you a pretty blunt question. But before that, we do have to give the audience a bit of context. So you are, of course, the CEO of Golden Tag, which is a company that's exploring multiple silver resources. Now, my question for you is, Greg, why should anyone watching this video invest in Golden Tag as a company?
We have an excellent value opportunity for investors. We provide leverage to silver, excellent silver exploration project. And most recently, we've moved from San Diego now to La Parrilla. La Parrilla is an acquisition of a recently shut down mine that we are looking to bring back into production. It will produce around 3 million ounces of silver equivalent per year when we bring it back into production and generate very substantial cash flows. So very good opportunity for investors to get in at the ground floor and leverage to two very good assets in silver.
Perfect. I think it was a really great and especially short answer. So thank you for that, Greg. Now I would like to dive a bit deeper into La Parrilla, which of course you started talking about. Which is, like you said, a property you're currently acquiring. Now, my main question now is, why did you decide to go for this specific property or mining complex?
This opportunity came available. It was formerly operated by First Majestic Silver, and it was their very first mine in Mexico. It was very profitable throughout its entire history, which is very attractive to us. And as well, it had all the in-place infrastructure, a fully complete mill complex that was already built. If we had to replace that today, it would be a $150 million expenditure, let alone the permitting time and all the other challenges that comes with construction. But we're getting all that for essentially $20 million in equity and some future payments. So it's a great value opportunity for our shareholders and new investors.
Excellent. And could you perhaps expand a bit on that cost side of the acquisition? Because as far as I'm aware, it's not $20 million in cash. It's actually mainly share-based payments. So could you perhaps dive a bit deeper into that and explain how it actually works?
We're paying $20 million in upfront equity, and there are $13.5 million worth of deferred payments. Most of that is weighted towards significant exploration successes. And even when those become payable, we have the election to pay it in cash or in equity.
Of course, there's also the other side of transaction, First Majestic, which you started talking about a bit ago. And they're the ones actually getting this equity in the business if you decide to go for that equity route instead of the cash route. But could you perhaps explain what First Majestic is getting out of this deal? Why would they go for equity instead of just hard gold cash?
So First Majestic believes that there's significant upside with this asset, and they don't really want to give up on it completely. They will initially hold about 40% of Golden Tag once the transaction is closed. And then in a year or so, after their 2024 shareholders meeting, they will dividend part of that holding to their current shareholders. So we're going to pick up a very good group of shareholders. And even going forward from that, First Majestic will hold 19.9% of the pro forma company. And we're very pleased to have them as one of our major shareholders.
That is really exciting. And I'm actually quite intrigued by this structure where the old owner is also becoming a significant shareholder in this business. So yeah, like I said, really exciting. But could you perhaps dive a bit deeper into what the company is actually purchasing? Because as far as I'm aware, the resource on paper is quite depleted, or it's close to its end of life. and the company is planning to drill on this resource, like I said, as far as I'm aware. So could you perhaps dive a bit deeper into that and what it actually means going forward?
Sure. So we're actually purchasing the entire plant, and the current resource that's on the books is a historical resource from First Majestic. It's about 22 million ounces of silver equivalent. We have commissioned our own third-party independent resource analysis that'll be done by SRK, and so that will we will put that out to the market in the coming months when it's completed, and then from there we will be taking the use of proceeds from the financing to build up the resource base, all of which would go to support the a new mine plan, which will then be the basis on which we restart the plant and the mine.
Perfect. Excellent answer. Could you perhaps dive a bit into what the timeline looks like between now and when the mine should become operational once again?
So we will close the transaction within the next few months, and then what we've guided the market towards is a restart within 18 to 24 months. There is an opportunity to restart sooner, but we're giving the 18 to 24 month guidance, and we will be doing the drilling and the technical work that needs to be done to support the restart in a judicious and careful way, so that once we take on all the additional costs of ramping up to a restart, we have a smooth restart of the mine.
Excellent. And that 18 to 24 month time window is after the acquisition actually goes through, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Then I think we've discussed La Parrilla quite in depth, and I would like to focus in on San Diego, which is actually the silver property that the company currently owns, so not currently in acquisition. Perhaps you can explain what this resource is, where it's located, and what it's all about.
So both assets are located in Durango State in Mexico. La Parrilla is 45 minutes away from Durango City, which is the main city in Durango State. And then we're about an hour and a half to San Diego, going the other way. Now, San Diego is a very large underground resource. The bulk of the resource is in the Fernandez zones, and it's about 210 million ounces of silver equivalent, with about 115 million ounces of silver only. Now, there are also a number of surface veins, and when we took over management in mid-2020, we raised money and did several drill programs since then, and we've discovered what we believe is another significant vertical zone that's parallel to the Fernandez zone, both of which are underground but are very wide intercepts. Things like 152 grams over 320 meters. That's one of the typical drill intercepts. But we've also, in the most recent drilling, and you'll find this in our press release, but for example, hole 2157 cut right from surface 72 grams over 273 meters. So this potentially is a game changer for us. There are other historical drill holes at San Diego that come right from surface. So there's a potential for open pit right above the really big Fernandez zone resource. So we'll be following up on that in the future, but we'll primarily focus on La Parrilla in the near term.
Okay, excellent answer. Now, just a thought that I had, because the properties are located quite closely together, both in the same province in Mexico, like you perfectly described. Is there potential for co-processing happening actually? So, for example, that the resource from San Diego gets sent to the processing facility at La Parrilla to get processed there. Is that potential, or is the distance too far to do such a thing?
That's a very astute question, because one of the items that we'll be following up in the technical studies that I mentioned for the restart of La Parrilla is to consider whether some of the oxide veins at San Diego that are right on surface, there's about 4+ million ounces in the currently identified drilled oxide veins, that potentially could be trucked to La Parrilla and processed. And if that's the case, well, then, we'll probably need to follow up on a number of the other oxide targets right at surface at San Diego, because there's probably a lot more resource there that's waiting to be discovered.
Wow, that's really exciting. Another question regarding the synergies between those two properties being located quite closely together. Are there other synergies, like for example, economies of scope that might occur thanks to those two properties being located so close together? Or is it mainly the co-processing route that the company is trying to research?
It's mainly the co-processing opportunity where you could take ore from San Diego over to the existing plant at La Parrilla. But there's always other synergies when your operations are located in good proximity to each other. For example, management sharing management between the two assets, sharing geological teams between the two assets, and all sorts of down the line operating, exploring things that you would need procuring. So there's many synergies that don't necessarily show up in the in the big headlines, but are definitely there, and that's one of the reasons why we were quite happy to find this acquisition, La Parrilla, right in Durango State.
Makes sense. Thank you so much for your insights, Greg. Now there's two more big topics I really want to discuss. First is cash. Because of course, for an exploration company, cash is almost central to their business. So what I would love for you to explain is what the current cash position of the company is like, and perhaps you can also dive a bit deeper into the cash requirements going forward, if that's at all possible, because of course there's quite a bit of uncertainties in mining.
We have just under $6 million on our balance sheet in Q1, and then we are raising $9 million here as part of the acquisition. And we have use of proceeds that will take us down to $4 million next year. And what we're going to spend the money on is the drill program, which we've mentioned. We'll also spend the money on the technical studies to get us back into production. And there are property payments and license fees that we have to pay for holding these valuable assets in Mexico.
Okay, great answer. Thanks for the overview. I think that's especially nice to hear from a mining company that they're planning so far out cash-wise. So thank you for that. Now the last big topic I want to talk about is actually silver itself. And as almost everyone knows back at home, the main use of silver, for example, in tableware or in jewelry. But if you look at silver demand and actually how many tons goes to these different sectors, there's one sector that jumps out especially, and that's industrial fabrication. And since you, Greg, are an expert on silver, especially compared to a retail investor like me, I would love it if you could explain why silver is used so much in industrial use cases, as a reference up to twice the amount that's used in, for example, jewelry.
Yeah, silver is growing, and demand will continue to grow because it plays an very important role, especially in the green energy revolution that's happening around the world. The primary uses are electronics, and you see it very often now with solar power generation. That's a very important growth, industrial growth area for silver. Automotive and semiconductors, that's also very important, and you'll be hearing more and more about that in the future. So we're very excited about silver. We're also excited about the opportunity for silver to outperform other commodities. One of the things that you'll notice is that the gold-silver ratio is, hovering around 80-1. Well, that's outside the historical range, and every time it pops up to 80 or 90-1, there's a sharp reversal. And so if silver gold ratio were to go back to some of the historical multiples, that would imply a silver price anywhere between $30, $35 all the way up to $60. So there's a number of different ways that we believe investors can benefit from owning Golden Tag. Number one, from our fundamentals on the ground, our exploration asset at San Diego, our production opportunity at La Parrilla with a deep value acquisition. And number two, from the future growth in silver demand, and thirdly, from returning to more historical ranges in silver price. So many different ways for investors to win by owning Golden Tag.
Well, perfect, Greg. Thank you so much for your time, your effort, and especially your expertise. So I tremendously appreciate you coming on the channel today.
Very much appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you.
Great. So perhaps you can now share where the people at home can actually follow you and can follow and read up on the company.
So our website is Golden Tag. You can just go on to our website. Where we disseminate lots of information about the company, and also you'll see us in various media as the acquisition closes. We'll be more and more prominent in different media discussing recent events and future and the future of Golden Tag.
Awesome. I'll make sure to drop the website link down below in the description. Again, thank you so much for coming here, Greg.